I was also trying to think of like how to start because this is new to me.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
One of the things that I avoid in toothpaste is fluoride. And oh no, that's the controversial one.
So are you actually recommending sauerkraut as a mouthwash?
I'm a big fan of mouthwash, but I'm not a big fan of any of the mouthwashes. Treat your mouth as a temple. And how would you clean the temple? Would you always clean it with the agent that's drying, or would sometimes you polish it up?
Welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast, a show exploring how herbs heal as medicine, as food, and through connecting with the living world around you. Well, if you've ever dealt with things like bleeding gums, sensitive teeth, even bad breath, and felt like you weren't really getting to the root of it, this episode might shift how you see your mouth entirely. Because what if those signs aren't random? What if your teeth and gums and tongue are actually telling you something about your overall health? Well, in this conversation, I'm joined by herbalist Kyle Denton and my co-host Mason Hutchison from Herbalism to explore a more holistic approach to dental care, one that helps you read those signs and then respond with intention using herbs and daily practices. And if you're curious to explore this further, Kyle's offering a free mini course all about herbal dental care, but it's only available for a limited time through May 23rd, 2026. You can join now using the link in the show notes or video description. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up so more plant lovers can find us. And be sure to stay tuned until the very end for your herbal tidbit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Herbs with Rosalee podcast. I'm super thrilled to be joined today by Kyle Denton. Welcome, Kyle.
Hey, greetings. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back and to see you both again.
Yeah, and I also have a co-host today, which is a new thing for me in this realm. So really excited to have Mason from Herbalism.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure. And we are here because we're super excited about a course that Herbalism is producing with Kyle on dental herbal care. And lots of stuff going on with that we're going to talk about later. But I actually just wanted to dive straight in, Kyle, and just get to it.
Love it. Let's go.
All right. My first question for you, my friend, is what's the biggest misconception people have about what actually keeps their teeth and gums healthy?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think the biggest misconception is that when you have a tooth problem, you have to get a specialized tooth care. And the big misconception is that we see this all the time in herbalism, right? When somebody goes to the herbalist with a tummy ache, let's just be general here. A well-trained herbalist is going to think about your nervous system. They're going to think about the microbiome. They're going to think about your diet, your lifestyle, what you're eating. What are the other inputs? Maybe even like the way your seatbelt is too tight or something like that. Like all these variables, right? And for some reason, maybe it's because the mouth is dark, and I like to joke that like you can't actually see in there unless you have like somebody else looking or a mirror or something like that. And it's hidden this way. It's a black hole. But maybe that's the reason. But it becomes an isolated point. And I think that this is the biggest misconception, is that our mouth actually represents a gateway. It's a portal to understanding the rest of the body, just like all these other systems that herbalists or people who are interested in herbs are likely to find when they're learning about herbs. Is, the hip bone connects to the leg bone, and the chamomile connects to sleep and relaxation and the nervous system and all the different ways. And the same thing I would say is like a big misconception about the mouth is, I got a dental problem, I need a dental solution.
It is interesting that the mouth, it feels almost like the final frontier in that way, like because there is a lot of systemic thinking, but somehow the mouth feels like it's like a holdout. It still is. People just think mouth, like as if it's self-contained from the rest of the body. Yeah,
I wonder if it's because, I'm not really sure about the psychological things, but maybe there was a oral fixation or something like that wasn't quite resolved, or I don't know, just the reason why people have a hard time thinking about or working within their own mouth.
Yeah.
Do we want to dive into his background a little bit?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Awesome. So I've known Kyle for many a year now, and I first knew you as an herbalist, but you also have this long history of work in the dental world. And just kind of curious, can you lead us through that journey, your dental background to herbalism and how you combine the two? And your last name is Denton. Do you feel like that was destiny?
Okay, there's this concept from ancient Greece language of the future tense verb. And it's not something that we, like English speakers or even like a lot of the Western languages, have a conception of. The only words that we have that are like future tense verbs are like will and shall and, maybe. And then we put those in front of other verbs like I will run, maybe, probably not. But I think a really great example of the future tense verb is the name that somebody is given. And back in time, this used to be the thing, like, oh, your name is Miller. Guess what? You're going to be crushing corn. Your name is Smith. Guess what? You're going to be wielding a hammer and making some horseshoes. And so here's me. I'm Kyle Denton. Hello, nice to meet you. My name's Kyle Denton, and that's perhaps me stepping into my role as my future tense verb and making it a present tense verb by realizing and like really claiming the teeth and the health of the teeth. And so it started actually, let's go in the past, a long time ago. I was a dental assistant. For many years, I'd worked in a dental office, many different dental offices. For 15 years, I was a dental assistant, and I had a lot of experience from all different types of clinics, from like the big corporate box clinics where, everybody comes in and they're always getting a bunch of procedures, working with, prosthodontists that make dentures and endodontists that do root canals and all these specialists, oral surgeons. And then I got to work for a very long time with a small family practice, private practice, where the dentist I worked for, he was the second generation, and his daughter was the third generation. So there was people that in his practice that were like, in their 80s and 90s that had been going to his dad and that saw him when he was just coming out of school, and then like their kids and their grandkids and it was just like this really, it's kind of like this old fashioned thing that, isn't so much, we don't find it so much in America anymore, but it's still there in these cases of like generational health. And the wealth that's within that too, within the community. It was awesome. And because I got to work in that capacity too, I got to do everything. I was his assistant, so I was not only as a dental assistant, but I was like the assistant of the office. I got to do all this stuff. I got to see the insurance. I got to see patient, complaints and doing all of the instrument cleanings and everything like that. Doing a bunch of lab work. So I got really trained in all of it. And while in this field, I always knew this is a stepping stone for me. I'm going to do something else someday, but I really liked working with people. I really liked, one of the things that I really love about dentistry too is the one-on-one. You can't do telehealth dentistry, maybe they'll figure it out someday, but until then, you're actually in physical proximity and you're observing somebody. And that's what I really loved. And so when I found my calling, or it found me, and I talked about this with you, Rosalee, on your podcast. We can listen to that. The listeners can listen to that one a few weeks or months ago on St. John's Wort. I described my whole story there. But during that time when I was learning about herbalism, clinical herbalism, going through Ayurveda school, I was still working as a dental assistant. So I was moonlighting as a herbal clinician. And it was really fun to have access to, people go to the dentist and they fill out their health history, their full health history. I had a surgery here and on this date and this date. And then I'm learning like tongue diagnosis, and I'm like, can you point to where your cavity is? And they point, it's like, it's right here. I'm like, can you stick out your tongue? I can't see it that well. And they're like, I don't understand why. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, cool. All right. There's the patterns of the tongue that reflect some of the things that I'm learning about in the health history. That's really interesting. And so that was kind of this was the bridge that crossed over from one clinical path to another. And also having all of this experience from, the many different tiers and facets of dentistry, and working with patients, working with my hands, and also having the the trust of the providers that I was working with to do things that a lot of people in my position usually don't do. So it was really, really good. It was really cool. I mean, they don't do, not because they're not allowed to, but it's just not something that a lot of assistants do anymore. It was always within my scope, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah.
Hey there, just a quick note. If you'd like to hear from me in a more personal way, I'd love to have you in my free text community. I send a couple of texts every week, things like behind the scenes updates, herbal thoughts that I'm chewing on, and little sparks of joy I don't always share anywhere else. To join, just text the word ROOT to 1-509-383-8398. And if you ever want to break up, no hard feelings. Just text STOP to the same number and you'll be opted out immediately. My goal is to make it so juicy and so fun that you look forward to getting my texts each week. Okay, now back to the show.
That's so cool. I love that it has the solid background in actual dentistry to go along with it.
Perfect person to teach the course.
Yeah. Good vision.
I did want to ask, so do you think you've lived up to the De La Forêt name of the forest?
Do I live in the forest?
And Seven Song says I'm son of Mace, son of Hutch. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But I think I lived up to it. Thanks for sharing, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Well, I have a question that's, I'm going to admit, a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. So first, a humble brag. When I go to get my teeth cleaned, the dental hygienist is always like, I have no pockets. Like, I have great gum health, great, oral health. And then she asked me what toothbrush I use. And I tell her, and she goes, you should really be using an electric toothbrush. And like every time I feel like I get told that. And every time I'm like, why? I have excellent oral health. Why? It just, for me, it's like this other electronic thing that I got to charge and do the thing. And then it's going to end up in a landfill. And I'm not into it. So I'm kind of curious, like, do you think it matters, Kyle? Like electric toothbrush, bamboo toothbrush, flossing toothbrushes, a large head, a soft head, hard bristles, soft bristles. Like, tell me, I want to know.
I have a theory before Kyle gets into it.
Yeah, please.
I think that they want to sell you on something.
Yeah.
But Kyle probably has a better answer than
You.
you.
They do sell those things in the dentist office and stuff like that. But let's just, let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they're also thinking that, they've been to these seminars and they could see, the mannequin gets like, way cleaner when you use that. But of course, one of the things I learned from as an herbalist, that's a clinician, that's also a medicine maker, that's somebody that sees people and wants them to get well, just like your hygienist, just like your dentist, is that the thing that works is the thing that people will comply with. That's it. And so a lot of times when I'm talking about an herb to my students, I'll say, like St. John's wort is great. And then I'll get a question, some people will raise their hand like, when you say St. John's wort is great, how do you take it? And I'm like, well, how would you take it? Because of course, well, maybe St. John's wort's not the best example because there's a lot of nuance with that, but the idea is that's it. How are you going to be brushing your teeth? Now, if somebody's going to brush their teeth better because they have an electric toothbrush and it's timed and it's doing all this stuff. I'm actually sensitive to electromagnetic fields, and I don't particularly like having electromagnetic fields moving around in my mouth, but I use an electric toothbrush. I just have ways of kind of like mitigating that feeling through myself. Just rinsing out with some swishing with some salt water or something like that, once in a while, that type of thing, just to kind of clear that. But that's the idea. To me, it all comes down to compliance. And if you got a great score and you're doing, whatever you like, then that's the best thing. Back in time, I don't know if I want to invoke Weston A. Price so early because this is kind of a controversial guy, but he was this anthropologist dentist dude, and he would go around to all these indigenous cultures from European, like in Switzerland and northern Scotland and all around like Africa and places like that. And he would notice that the people that had like perfect teeth, all their teeth and everything like that, they were basically living within their indigenous lifestyle. And he made continued summaries to say that like, oh, it's because they're eating their indigenous foods and they're chewing the way that they should. But one thing that was true about all of them is that none of them brushed their teeth. So can we say that like the best actually, based on Weston A. Price's research, is that, like no toothbrush actually, because, like your ancestors didn't use an electric toothbrush. Well, we live in a modern age. And so we have, these modern things that we're going to do. So the best thing that we're going to do is the thing that we're actually going to use. That's my opinion on it, at least. I'm just a guy. But I do know that from a clinical point of view, that if I'm making somebody a tea and it's got like blue vervain and motherwort and golden seal and stuff like that in it, then they're probably not going to come back to me. And so that's and the reason why is because those herbs are gross as a tea. You got to put them into a tincture. And that's kind of the same principle, I think, when it comes to what are you going to use, the thing that you use.
Well, I can appreciate that. I'm still going to go back to my dental hygienist, but I'm going to use my low-tech toothbrush for now.
I actually do have an electric toothbrush, and I do enjoy it, and I think it is the compliance thing, like you mentioned, the timer thing, and yeah, it's been helpful for me. So, do we want to talk toothpaste?
Let's talk toothpaste. Yeah.
All right, we'll dive into toothpaste. Is there anything that toothpaste you recommend, or types you want to avoid, ingredients, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of crunchy, so I'm always looking at every ingredient on everything, on every package. And these are some of the things that I'm looking to avoid in toothpaste. And I say this with a little hint of peril that the comment section it can blow up in times when people are saying, avoid this or don't avoid this. I'm gonna just be specific and say this is what I look for. This is what I'm avoiding as myself, and the people can make their own choices based on it. And this is what the information that I have, which is always changing and subject to change. But one of the things that I avoid in toothpaste is fluoride. And oh no, that's the controversial one. Especially if you tell your hygienist, they're the ones that went to school. They're the dentist. They're the one who went to school forever. And you tell them that you don't use fluoride. Well, more and more dentists lately are kind of like getting it, especially because of like it's become a talking point in the social networks and everything like that on fluoride. So I just avoid fluoride because of the issues that it can have with neurotoxicity and dental fluorosis. However, I understand and I can appreciate from a clinical point of view, like what happens when you put fluoride on a tooth. Like it literally becomes harder. I've seen it, but I avoid it, especially because I have little kids. And there's no way that I can get my kid to spit the toothpaste out when he puts it on his toothbrush. Like that sucker is he's gonna be eating whatever goes on his toothpaste. So we got to make sure, because there's little, there's warnings on there. If you consume this, better call the poison control or whatever. It's like, oh, well, that's kind of a big deal. So I consider that a very serious thing, And so, however, I understand that it's kind of like in our homes and it's been in our culture for a long time. But I'm avoiding fluoride. There's some other ingredients like triclosan. This has also been debated. Like, should the FDA ban this? It's banned in other countries. This is something that's found in toothpaste and body washes, like an antimicrobial, antibacterial thing. There's this other thing in there that's in toothpaste called sodium lauryl sulfate, or sometimes it's abbreviated as SLS, and that's made to like make things bubbly and foamy, and that can cause skin irritation or irritation of the mucosal membranes or even in the lungs. So that'd be something that, as holistic herbalist, if somebody's coming to ask me about what is causing this aggravation in their throat that's chronic, I might say, let me look at your toothpaste. Like, do you have any SLS in there? There's propylene glycol in a lot of toothpaste, and I could be bad faith and say that's vape juice, but I could also just which it is. But there's connections with propylene glycol, which is something it's used to improve like the shelf life. That's connected with nervous system disease and liver heart disease and stuff like that. Same goes for artificial sweeteners. And so as herbalists and connoisseurs of the flavors of life, the flavors that come from the plants and life, when we taste something that's like really super yucky sweet, like this is like a poser, this is like a poser flavor. And I'm like I like the OG kind of flavors, like that are in the crunchy people toothpaste, like neem and licorice and fennel. And so some of these other ones that you can get at the health food store that have the little thing on the container that says like doesn't have any SLS, doesn't have any fluoride, doesn't have any artificial sweeteners. I'm like, okay, those are pretty good. But I like to make my own, but I also know that from a compliance standpoint, having little kids, that we got to have something on the toothbrush that tastes like yummy thing. Like my son's current toothpaste is like fig flavored. I'm like, that's kind of an interesting flavor for toothpaste. Let me try that. I don't think I will be spitting this out either.
Hey friends, it's Rosalee. If you've been nourished by this podcast, if it's helped you feel more connected to the plants or more grounded in your own herbal path, then I'd love to invite you to join the Herbs with Rosalee podcast circle. This special membership helps make the podcast possible. It supports everything we do behind the scenes, and it gives you a chance to go even deeper with the content that you love. Inside the circle, you'll get exclusive herbal resources, live classes each season with some of my favorite herbal teachers, and a private space to connect with fellow plant lovers. It's where the heart of our herbal community continues to grow. To learn more and join us, visit herbalpodcastcircle.com. Your support means the world, and it helps this podcast continue to bloom.
Well, that was interesting to hear. I've also had the fluoride conversation with my dental hygienist. And again, I keep saying like, but my oral health is great. So, like if there's a problem, let's talk. But when things are going well, like I think I'm just going to keep on keeping on. That's my choice right now. Yeah. So you mentioned like kind of ingredients as flavors. I was curious, you see like toothpaste at the health food store or whatever, and they have like neem and clove. And I'm just curious, like, it's like when I see like echinacea in a shampoo or something, like, are there like, do you think there's enough herbs in there that this really like makes a difference in oral health? Are there some that are better than others? Is it one of those, like everybody's jumping on the herbal bandwagon right now, and so we put a little bit of herbs in there and suddenly it's cool? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hate to be a hater when it comes to like these trends, so I'm not. I'm gonna be a proponent that likes to push things into a better direction and encourage, maybe them add more or less stabilizers to the echinacea shampoo, or encourage people to make their own shampoo that actually using nettles to rinse it. And the same thing goes for toothpaste too. Like I see the marketing appeal, and I think it's great. And I think that a lot of times when people are buying something that has neem or clove in it, they're not buying the one that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend, which is not so good for you maybe. Sorry to not to undermine the 4 out of 5 dentists. By the way, I've never seen these 4 out of 5 dentists either that are always recommending per the commercials. That is what they say they do. But anyway, yes, use your discernment. I think there's a bit of marketing. When you taste neem, here's what you can do. You can go to your herb shop and you can ask for, I don't know, 1/10 of an ounce of neem, and that might be enough for the rest of your life. And because unless you use it a lot for whatever reason, like to get rid of parasites or something like that. But once you taste it, you'll be like, there's no effing way. I would never make a toothpaste out of this. It is so gross. I think the flavor of neem is the flavor of garlic in boiled peanut water. Like, it's so gross. It's so nasty. So how is that going to be redeemable in a toothpaste? It's gonna be like this much of the ingredient of that much of a batch. And so if we are going to talk about the benefits of neem, which we would in our course, of course, we are also going to have to come to terms with how a medicinal herb is applied in the same way that we do all of our herbalism. And with going back again to compliance, maybe the only way that somebody's going to comply with needing neem or a little bit of clove or cinnamon is by putting it in their toothpaste. And that's how they get used to it. And then they build up from there.
What's your take on mouthwash, whether that be like store-bought or you make your own? Curious how often you would recommend someone taking it, if you recommend it at all. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of mouthwash, but I'm not a big fan of any of the mouthwashes. I think mouthwash is great, and I think it's awesome to use oil, which is from the Ayurvedic tradition, oil pulling, and swishing some oil around in your mouth, or taking some salt water and swishing some salt water in your mouth, going out to the sea if you live next to the ocean and doing something like that. But a lot of the mouthwashes out there have either some of these ingredients that I previously mentioned, or they're, one of the things that's kind of like a gap that still is missing in a lot of specialized professions. Although, the dentist, and I don't have a bone to pick with dentists, and I have a lot of respect for the dental industry. But if they're going to give you an antibiotic, they also might recommend to you a probiotic. And the reason why is because people nowadays understand that we have our gut microbiome. But for whatever reason, it still is yet to dawn on a lot of people that we are just a microbiome all over the place. Our skin, our lungs, our nails, and our mouth. And that's the problem with a lot of these mouth rinses, is that they can desiccate and mutilate and destroy the microbiome in the same way that neighborhoods pop up over farmlands. This is like repopulating areas with different types of, ecology. So when you wipe out the native ecology of your mouth with a mouthwash because of a particular reason, maybe an acute reason, and it's needed, gum surgery or something like that. But on a daily use kind of thing, it's like I always think of it as like the subdivisioning of your mouth microbiome kind of a thing. So that's what I think it's like. And I think it's better to have the types of mouth rinses like oil pulling that are nourishing and nurturing to our native populations, or things that actually have probiotics in them. What would it be like to show up at work or to go to kiss your wife the morning of rinsing your mouth out with sauerkraut? You're going to be the sauerkraut mouthwash guy, Kyle? Is that your future tense verb you're going to live up to? I don't know. But I think there's a market for that kind of thing. So what if we made a sauerkraut mouthwash and we did the same thing with neem, where we put just a little bit of sauerkraut and we can call it that kind of thing in the marketing. But that's kind of my thoughts on mouthwash. Is you better watch it and be careful and use it in the same way that you would with essential oils or anything else that tends to be antimicrobial over time.
So are you actually recommending sauerkraut as a mouthwash? Because I would almost think that'd be acidic, but then again, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Would that be detrimental, beneficial? Because I'll do it.
He would too.
I think it would be it could be, I don't know. So I have no idea because I've never done it, but I'm very interested in it because I've been learning a lot of research about how sauerkraut is being added to agriculture lands to neutralize the effects of glyphosate and forever chemicals. And they learned that because they were giving sauerkraut to cows who were having a hard time nursing, and it improved their breast milk or their cow milk, whatever it's called, production, and then also their liver and their heart and all this other stuff. So I don't know. I think it might be cool. But if you did it, maybe just do it and then do your oral routine so that you rinse it out afterwards and you don't show up in the morning going to kiss your wife with or your partner with sauerkraut mouth. But there's whole cultures that probably do that anyway. So what do I know? I'm kind of joking, but it actually might be a good idea. So I don't know.
I have heard you bring up salt water rinses a couple times. Do you recommend folks use some sort of salt water rinse in between meal, or like immediately following a meal?
I love saltwater rinses. I think that they're great. They do have they can be labeled in antimicrobial ways but I think a better way of describing what they do is that they are shifting the terrain of our mouth rather than killing cultures of microbes and being supportive of it. I'm kind of into the woo-woo aspect too. So I really like, the way that salt water can cleanse a field. Maybe if you ever heard of like people putting their crystals in salt water. Look, I got crystals and I'm woo-woo, but I've never cleaned my crystals with salt water. I've only heard about that, okay? But if you could just think about like how awesome you feel after you go to the beach, and you get the salt water and it just really does feel like cleansing and changing. And so I like to think about that in the mouth too. And I learned this from the Japanese cultures. There's this thing in Japan where they rinse out their mouth with salt water, and then as a culture it helps them feel like they can speak clearer. How come I'm having a hard time looking for words with this concept? But that's the idea, is that if our mouth represents the voice of what's within, of the throne that's within, and that we could see the reflections and within our mouth, just like we can with, reflexology or the acupuncture that's in the ear, or iridology and all these holographic things, that it makes sense in that way. And so I like it in that way. And then to me, it trickles down into the material from that realm rather than going back the other way. But yeah, I do think it's a good idea, and not to be prescriptive to everyone, because I think everyone's different. And this is one of the things that I really like to introduce with our course that we're curating here, is that not one for everyone, because everyone's got different constitutions and everyone's got different goals with where they are in their health. So if you think about the nature of salt water in general, this is why in the Ayurvedic tradition, the neti pot, which has come over to the West, a lot of people know about the neti pot, but they don't know about its sister. The sister is the nasya oil. And the nasya oil is linked to the neti pot. Like, you do the neti pot, and what happens? It gets clean and it gets dry. Like, that's what salt does. It dries you out. And then you come in with its sister, the nourishing oils. And so when it comes to like a saltwater mouth rinse all the time, or maybe you want to switch it up, maybe salt water here, oil that, and then little things like that. Treat your mouth as a temple. And how would you clean the temple? Would you always clean it with the agent that's drying, or would sometimes you polish it up? And that's something that I think about when it comes to salt water or just mouth rinses in general.
Well, that was interesting. You said, there's not like one thing for everybody. But I've seen Listerine commercials quite a few times. And Listerine mouthwash kills like 99.9% of germs. And so they kind of make it sound like Listerine's for everyone. And also that this type of mouthwash is like the thing for bad breath. So I'm wondering, like, shouldn't everybody have Listerine? And is mouthwash the best thing and the only thing for bad breath?
I became kind of I don't want to say connoisseur. I understand the difference between very different kinds of bad breath. Connoisseur is the wrong word. I don't want to smell it, but I know what kinds of bad breath are what. And so this is one of the things I want to talk about in the course, is that there are types of halitosis or bad breath that come from bacteria that are eating along the pockets along the inside of the gums. And that's in there, and that's deeper. Maybe there's bad breath because there's actually other debris or something stuck in the mouth, or the tongue hasn't been cleaned or scraped for a long time. But I could tell the difference between that, which it could be like I would just say is like periodontal bad breath, maybe the Listerine clientele, versus the types of bad breath that come from like deeper down in the tissues. And this is one of the awesome things about learning about the mouth, is that we can learn about especially from a tissue state perspective, is that we can learn about the rest of the body. And so what does our breath tell us about the rest of our body? And so there's some people who have a type of constitution that when they get hungry, they start to get, you could like, maybe you work closely or you are somebody like this, and you like when you're working really hard and it's about 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and then you're like, I just want to push through, and then the people around you are kind of like backing up a little bit, or maybe that you know this type of person, you know, like they're in their intense mode, and when they are, I could kind of smell it, and there's something deeper going on. That's not germs, that's this fiery type of constitution. In these kind of cases, I'm thinking like, if it wasn't Listerine, I'm thinking about bitters. I'm thinking about things that are going to like have an effect that's going to tighten up the esophageal sphincter, that's going to bring moisture, that's going to like bring this downward movement because things are starting to come up here and it's starting to smell. And that's the nature of the fire element, or that fire type of person. We say the pitta type of person. Oh, I just talked about the pitta hour, 11 a.m. It's pitta time. It's pitta o'clock. It's time to transform. Got to get this spreadsheet done before lunch. It's like, no, I think you need some lunch. and here, have some bitters first. And I think that would be better. So breath, the way that breath presents, or let's just say bad breath, there's like a whole bunch of different ways that we can learn about bad breath. It could be fun to just like do a smell case study. I'm joking here, but you'll know when you start to know, you'll know, and you'll be like, that's the difference between that person needs to floss or get their teeth cleaned versus, and maybe, you know, swish around with some Listerine afterwards. Did you just promote Listerine, Kyle? No. Versus the type of person that has maybe chronic bad breath because they work too hard and they're not taking care of the fire element within their body and taming that and focusing that instead of letting it kind of like flutter up to the top.
Love that holistic approach. Yeah.
Here for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the cliche favorite herb question, but do you have any favorite herbs for oral health? And if so, why?
I do. And this is fun for me too, because I get to say what my favorite herbs are for oral health for me, but I also want to leave it on the table that there's like a whole bunch of really great ones, especially, you know, that we could talk about in the course too. But my favorite one for me is cloves. And I tell you why, because I'm the type of guy that likes things a little bit more intense and likes them a little bit more spicy. I can use a little bit more of the stimulating qualities that are within herbs. Not everyone can. But cloves, to me, they have the signature of they look like teeth. They look like little teeth. And so what I do, one of my favorite things to do is on my drive to work, I have about a half-hour drive today, pop a clove in my mouth. And it's just enough time, and I like to move it around my mouth with my tongue. So I'm like exercising my lymphatic system. I'm exercising while I'm driving. That's what I tell myself. I'm moving my tongue around, and I try to take the little clove to like, as if it were a toothpick going around my tooth, you know, because sometimes at the top of the clove bud, there's it could be round, and at the other part, it's kind of sharp. And I like to like move it around with my tongue like that. And by the time that it gets soft in my mouth, my mouth feels like tingly and excited and hot. And it makes my breath smell good. But that's a good herb for me because I could use that type of stimulation. And I don't know if that's the right herb for everyone. And in fact, I know it's not. And here's something that I actually would really have a conversation with anybody who asks me about clove oil or, you know, things like this. I'm always wondering, like, when people ask me, "Do you have any clove?" And I'm like, "What do you want it for?" Because a lot of times people will say, "I heard that it's really good for teething babies," and I just talked about an herb that gives me this super fiery intensity, and that's what I like as a grown-up, because I can handle that type of stuff. But man, clove buds or just clove powder, just the way that I was describing for a little tiny infant, compare that now. That's just nothing compared to clove oil, essential oil, which is super, super, super intense. So here we go again. We learn about herbs, and when we learn more about herbs, we learn I think the better way of learning about herbs is to learn about their actions and their energetics, and matching up their actions and energetics to what we're seeing and to who we are and to who we're working with. And so for me, clove, and another one that I like to chew on is calamus root. That's a really fun one to make me holler and a hoot, as I like to think. And that's kind of a crazy tasting herb too. A lot of people are like, calamus, that's the grossest thing I've ever tasted. But it really does have all of those flavors. They have actions that help stimulate help stimulate the mind, but also help relax too. There's an acrid quality as well in calamus, as well as the bitters and the aromatics. And I just I'm a herb chewer. That's how I really love about learning about herbs. I know which ones I can chew on and which ones I can't, but I actually have some bay leaf in my pocket. I'd just been walking around and picking bay leaf and just chewing on bay leaves, but clove all time. That's my fave.
Thanks for that. Nice one. I don't know that I've ever chewed on a whole clove like that before.
I haven't either.
Yeah, I'm going to try that. Yeah.
Same.
So Kyle, what I'm loving is your both kind of very holistic perspective. We talked about bad breath, and you're talking about the fire element and personality, and just that looking at that whole person. Also love that you're completely non-dogmatic. You're not everyone must, or you're not pulling that either. So you have this very overarching holistic view of things. And I'm so excited for this course that you're doing with Herbalism. And so that course is enrolling now, but I know that there's a mini course going on right now that people can opt into for free, get to know you even better, get to hear some perspectives. And I know one of the important parts of that you begin with is mindset. And you talk about how we can have kind of a black or white approach to or just to dentistry right now. And people might feel, fearful about things, or, just they're stuck in conventional dentistry. Or, sometimes a lot of the alternative information out there is can be very fear-based. I remember getting into those kind of rabbit holes thinking I was going to die because I had a root canal, for example. So how do you help people with that mindset and finding a middle ground and finding places where they can feel empowered? I know this is part of your mini course training, but just wondering if you touch on that. And I definitely, if anybody's listening to this and you're oh yeah, I've been there, I really recommend this mini course as a way to dive into it deeper. But yeah, I'm wondering if you'd touch on that now, Kyle.
I think that's a great question. It is, to me, that is the primary question that I asked myself making the course that I made, and it's the first thing that I addressed in the course. So if you get the course, this is the first thing that we talk about, and the first thing that we talk about is I like to think of the meridian chart. You were probably alluding to that before, which is there's the meridians to all the teeth, right? And so we have 32 teeth, so there's 32 meridians. And so if you had a filling on this one, oh my gosh, then all the potential for things to go wrong, or breast health here, and then you had a root canal, so that means and I'm joking too, because I had my wisdom teeth removed, and the upper wisdom teeth, the third molars, that represents wisdom. And so, and I wonder, is that why I need a calculator for my simple math? Because of the wisdom teeth. Oh my God, I blew it. Everything that we're presented with, this is my view, everything that we're presented with is an offer, whether we know it or not. Okay, so the offer, when we see the tooth meridian chart, that's a data set. Or the offer that we're given from a doctor from a guy like me who teaches a class, from the signals of our own body. Everything is an offer. And so what are we going to do with that information? That's the first step, is recognizing that it's an offer. Oh, okay. I got a toothache. There's something for me to negotiate here. Okay, I concede. You win. Or what if I accept that offer? I accept the offer of the meridian chart on the condition that I get to learn how to do math again in my head someday. Right? Like this is how we can move through the world in honor. I really feel like the world is set up this way. This is just my personal philosophical bias, but it is a philosophical question. Like, how do we deal with all this extra stuff? It's just like, it's all on offer. So is that information important to me? Do I accept it? Do I reject it? And where do I stand in this offer? Now, do I have standing do I accept that I have standing even though the person in front of me has a DDS after their name and has a white coat on? Or can I recognize that actually we have equal standing at this negotiation and what's on offer here, and I respect that we're at the table together. These are the types of things that I think about too. And the same can be said about, the dark corners of the internet that talk about, like, fluoride in the bottled water and the blah blah blah. Okay, so or the root canals, and there's documentaries about these types of things. It's all data set, and we could put our mind to it, and we can make up our mind, and we could think about, okay, there's some things that are in our control, and there's some things that are out of our control. Which ones are in our control? Okay, here's what's in my control. Here's what I'm going to choose. Here's what I have power to choose. Sometimes the only thing that we have power to choose is how we interpret the situation. That's kind of life, right? And so it is what it is. The toothache, it's throbbing and keeping me up. Okay, well, how am I going to interpret it? Am I going to be the worst person in the whole world to everyone for the rest of the day? Maybe. That's my choice though, right? So that's kind of my answer, is that everything's an offer. And I know that that's also a very profound and difficult offer for a lot of people to hear, because the philosophical implications of the end of that statement wrap up in an offer. So consider that an offer to consider as well, if that's something that vibes with you or not.
Follow up?
No, I like it. Yeah, just it's very Kyle in that he's not being that dogmatic. This is right, this is wrong, but really, like, we're all just going to take an information and then figure out the best route from there.
What inspired you to create the Herbal Dental Care course, Kyle?
You did, Mason.
I don't want
to. My buddy Mason, he said, I'm looking for the future tense verb of the. I don't know if when you asked me if you knew that I had the type of experience that I had, but one of the things is that I have a lot of experience in this. I think about it a lot. I feel like, as far as like the herbal field goes, I'm an expert in this niche. And so when I hear and read other people talking about, their ideas and opinions and things like that, I'm like, I think differently, and I have really strong thoughts. So let me make a course about it, because I think, I think that I've seen so much stuff, and I have a lot of information on herbs, and I really like teaching people, and I really like teaching people about the simplest ways that they can find the principles with herbs and apply them in so many different ways. And one of the things that I love about the mouth is that it's just like all this other stuff, and we can see the rest of the body. We can see their nervous system. We can see our circulatory system. We can learn about You know, it's like the rings of a tree. It tells you the droughts and everything like that. We can learn about our endocrine system from the way that our teeth are. We can learn about our fascia. That's a big thing lately too, is like the fascia and the connective tissue and that type of thing. That I really feel like the mouth is a big frontier for that, becoming aware of your posture and everything like that. So yeah.
I love this subject so much. When you told me that you had this idea and that you were approaching Kyle with it, like the whole time I was just like, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And one thing that I don't know if worry is the right word, but I'll just say worry. I worry that people will think like, oh, I know about this because I know about clove, or I know about echinacea. So like I know herbs for gum health, for example. But one thing I love that you get into in the free mini course that you're doing right away is you start talking about the tissue states and like, oh, it's beyond like, you're going so much farther than like, oh, Googling like what herb is good for, blank problem in the mouth, and really looking at it from a herbal like theory class, which I just really appreciate. So it's this deep dive into that different way of thinking about the mouth that again goes beyond like this herb for that problem. I'm wondering if you just get like, that is all in the mini course. So obviously we don't want to recreate that here, but I was wondering if, if you just maybe even like give an example of like why you would want to think about, say, like the 6 tissue states from an herbal theory perspective versus like just Googling herbs for mouth pain or something like that.
Yeah, because it's just like if somebody comes to a clinical herbalist or, maybe even like the neighborhood herbalist and they say, what do you got for a cough? Well, what kind of cough do you got? That's my question. And because there could be 100 people around the block waiting to ask me the same question, and they all have different presentations. And so the same thing is true. So this is where conventional dentists really get it right, because if you go to a dentist, they're actually describing their tissue states. They're asking you about your tissue states, and they don't even realize it when you go in there for a toothache, like for an emergency. They'll ask you, is it hot sensitive or is it cold sensitive? Does it hurt when you press it, which is tension, or does it hurt when you let go? Because what they're thinking is like, oh, is there a fracture? But they're taught that they're asking about the same things that an herbalist would ask. Is there tension or is there laxity? These are the types of tissue states I'm trying to get to, because that's what I'm thinking about. Because I know that there's herbs that are going to help more with the case of tension than just some anti-inflammatory that actually, like turmeric or something, that actually might dry out or heat something up, when really the cause of the problem is excess tension. And then there's the other tissue states, dry and damp. I mean, the mouth is the place where we actually, one of the first places where we observe that fluid dynamic of thirst, right? The sense of thirst. And how that could have a reflection for the rest of the body, or also the teeth or the gums. Or too much dampness. So you woke up on your pillow, or you came into your Nona's house and then they're making lasagna and you're drooling all over the place. So the case is for me. And so, the tissue states, understand, like that's what a dentist is doing. They're getting down to the tissue states because that's going to help them with their specific remedies. And so why don't we as herbalists also think that way? We should. And by the way, it is so much easier to practice in terms of tissue states than to commit to memory 1 million herbs for blah, blah, blah itis, Oh, I think I read about blah, blah, blah itis about 6 months ago. Oh, gosh, there was an herb for it, but what was it? Blah, blah, blah itis. Just tell me, what are the conditions of blah, blah, blah itis? Are you experiencing hot? Are you experiencing cold? Experiencing damp, dry, tense, lax? There, we could figure it out from there. And one of the fun things about learning about herbs from the tissue states is that we can learn about them through our sense of taste. So this is why this course is so cool as an introduction for herbalism, because we really can incorporate the basic principles of herbalism, of the tissue states, and the foundational actions that we experience within our mouth as the organ, the sensory organ that's telling us what the herb is doing for the rest of the body, but also for the acute tissues of the mouth. It's brilliant. It's really cool.
That is brilliant. Obviously something that I'm a big fan of myself. And I love the mini course. Highly recommend that folks go check it out. We have, you're going to be releasing 3 videos through the mini course, all on different topics. It's just a great way to get to know you, get to know just your perspective. And that mini course is just available for a short time. So folks should check it out now. And then you will be enrolling for the full course. And that's going to be a 5-module course, I believe.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it'll be the enrollment for that is closing, I know, on May 23rd. So folks want to check that out, 2026, May 23rd. Check it out. Definitely do the mini course. Check out the full course. It's going to be layers and layers of information. And
I'm sure we mentioned this somewhere, but the link at the top of the show notes or somewhere in the show notes,
yes.
You can click there to learn more about the mini course.
Thank you.
Probably the full-on course as well.
You're the best co-host.
I try.
The details. Yes, we'll put the link in the show notes so you can check that out right away. And yeah, when we view the last question, since you're such a fabulous co-host.
Oh, me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things about this course that I'm excited about, I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of this in the show already, but they're not just learning about oral care, but they're also learning about herbalism. Like it's going to be a deep dive into at least Kyle's philosophy on herbalism. But and you've covered a lot already, Kyle, but is there anything else, any key concepts that you're hoping folks take away from after taking the full Herbal Dental Care course?
Yeah. One of the things that I always hope, that I always strive for as a teacher and as a student, is really just to have the path of learning continue to be open. And so when it comes to teaching, to be able to give the principles of learning so that the students, like myself as a student, can continue to apply them to all these unique scenarios that continue to come up over and over and over. And to really have to be fortified in the principles are few, the applications are many. And so knowing that going through these principles again of the tissue states, and I know, one of the things I want to say too is that maybe you've learned the tissue states, maybe you know them inside and out, but being able to apply them now to the oral health and to also show that the tissue states and the way that we've come to know them and learn them, love them, and apply them continue to be the same in all of our organ systems, and the mouth is no different. And so that's really the thing that I like to set the intention for myself as when I teach, is that, man, I learned so much stuff. And why? It's because I like to create this principle-based learning where I can continue to learn, and I can learn from the people that are sharing their stories. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about this class, is for us to come together. We're going to be doing live classes, so we can have some live analysis. We can have live Q&A. This is really cool because there's a lot of courses nowadays that, you do on your own time. And of course it's going to be recorded and you can go back and listen and stuff like that. I think it's really, I'm the type of person that loves to be in the interaction experience with the students. That's where I learn a lot too. And I'm going to bring that for this course as well. So yeah, good question, Mason.
Thank you.
Well, I'm really excited for what y'all are offering. I'm excited to be a student in it myself. So looking forward to that. And I really appreciate both of you being here. We didn't mention it, but Kyle's calling in all the way from Italy. So thanks for making time.
Ciao.
While you're overseas.
Yes, my pleasure. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Prego, as they say here.
Yeah.
I can't say it.
What's that?
Prego, as they say.
Oh.
Prego.
What's that mean?
Means you're welcome.
Oh, okay.
Means, yeah, I pray to you that you are welcome, I guess, basically.
Well, thanks so much. And everyone, again, check out the show notes, get the link, go check out the mini course, and highly recommend the full dental herbal care course as well. Thanks, you all.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks so much. And thanks everybody out there.
As always, thank you so much for listening. Did you know that I offer transcripts for every single episode? You can just head over to herbswithrosaliePodcast.com or check out the show notes for a link. Also, if you're not already subscribed, I'd love to have you as part of this herbal community. so I can deliver even more herbal goodies your way. This podcast is made possible in part by our awesome students. This week's student spotlight is on Sheila Kubik in Ohio. Sheila immersed herself in Rooted Medicine Circle, the healing power of teas, and the Herbal Energetics course, and her journey has really reflected this beautiful transformation through hands-on learning. With a background in environmental education, she's been blending science with direct experience, tasting herbs, crafting her own grapefruit bitters, and noticing how these plants support her body. She described working with bitters as an eye-opening and powerful experience, especially as she began to feel their effects on digestion and circulation. Her Rooted Medicine Circle capstone project brought everything home, literally, by exploring the plants growing on her property. Sheila shifted from seeing many of them as weeds to recognizing them as valuable allies. She now shares their medicinal and nutritional gifts through educational presentations, helping others see the abundance growing right around them. To honor her contributions, Mountain Rose Herbs is sending Sheila a $50 gift certificate to stock up on their incredible selection of organically and sustainably sourced herbal supplies. Thank you, Mountain Rose, for supporting our amazing students. And if you'd like to be an herbalist, you can check out my foundational courses at herbswithrosalee.com. Okay, you've made it to the very end of the show, which means you get your very own gold star and this herbal tidbit. One of the things that's been fascinating researchers and myself in recent years is just how connected the oral microbiome is to the rest of the body. So we often think of the mouth as separate, but microbes living in the mouth have been linked to everything from cardiovascular health to even metabolic function. And what's especially interesting is that the mouth can sometimes show signs of imbalance before other symptoms appear elsewhere. So in a lot of ways, learning to pay attention to the mouth isn't just about dental health. It's about catching patterns early and then responding before things really progress. And again, if you're curious to learn more about how to work with these patterns using herbs and daily practices, Kyle's free Herbal Dental Care course is now available. It's a mini course. It's previewing a much larger course that I highly recommend. But for now, it's only available until May 23rd, 2026. So go find that link in the show notes or video description and go check it out. As always, thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next episode.